Tonight, we're looking at the ongoing problems within the federal prison system that have recently come to light. Michael Carvajal, the director of the Federal Bureau of Prisons, announced his resignation from his post after a reporting by the Associated Press found abuse, misconduct, and corruption. More than 100 federal prison workers had been arrested or convicted for crimes since 2019, including a warden charged with sexually abusing an incarcerated person and another charged with murder. The report found that 1/5 of the cases they tracked involved crimes of a sexual nature, second only to cases involving smuggled contraband. Carvajal has been with the Bureau of Prisons for 30 years and was appointed director by then Attorney General William Barr in February of 2020. I've got investigative reporter from the Marshall Project, Joe Neff, with me to discuss this report and its findings. Glad to have you on, Joe.
Good to be here.
Now, some who may have read the AP report may have been shocked by these findings, but I certainly wasn't. I mean, having worked within the criminal legal system for as long as I have, I understood that these issues were always there. They were just exacerbated by COVID-19. At least some of them were. Were you surprised by what this report uncovered?
No, I wasn't surprised. The finding that the most charges were contraband. Contraband is a problem, drugs and cell phone, in just about every prison in the country. The number of charges involving sex was disturbing. I found the incident of the warden in the Dublin prison, which is a women's prison in California, to be perplexing. That a warden who's been, decades of experience and knows that any sexual contact between a staffer and a prisoner is de facto a crime. And the thing that really got me scratching my head was he had allegedly taken all these photos of this one prisoner of her nude on his government issued cell phone, which just doesn't seem to be a very bright thing to do, and calls into question, who are we hiring to run these prisons? And the other thing that's very important to know about this is that the warden often is the one who has the final say over how investigations go into wrongdoing at the prison. So if we have a warden, allegedly, he's not been convicted yet, but he's got plenty of charges there. If a warden's doing that, what message does that send to the incarcerated people and to the people who work there? Not a good one.
Absolutely not. Well, Carvajal was a Trump administration holdover whose time as director had been plagued with scandals. So what I don't understand, Joe, is why wasn't he immediately replaced when the Biden administration moved into the White House, especially when the issue of criminal justice reform was so important, or is so important, to the president? Was this a massive failure on the part of the administration?
I'm not sure. Putting it back in context, Biden comes into office in January. We had the January 6th. All of a sudden we have COVID breaking out, and the BOP director is actually not as high profile as the Attorney General, the Secretary of State. I could see how this job would not be a priority, but he was clearly sending signals of he was not up to the job. I don't know, in talking with prisoners or talking with correctional officers, who was he more unpopular among? Neither of them. I've seldom heard anything good from either prisoners or staff about him. And I think one of the most telling things is, soon after Carvajal came in, a representative from Maryland, David Trone, met with him. Now, Trone owns the biggest beer and wine retailer in the country and has long had an interest in putting people to work when they leave incarceration. And he met with Carvajal, asked him a bunch of questions, And Carvajal said, I'll get back to you. No, Carvajal did not get back to him. Trone calls him again, sends his staff over, never hears back from Carvajal. This is an elected representative with a deep and abiding interest in prison issues. A year later, in last March, at a hearing, Trone said flat out, I believe you're incompetent. I believe your staff doesn't care. And I've told President Biden to fire you. Now, that was in March. In January, 10 months later, the Bureau of Prisons admitted that they've never answered these questions that this representative asked almost 2 years ago. And it points out some problems. Are they just disinterested? Are they not competent enough to know that they have an ally here who really wants the prison system to work and put people to work afterwards? It's I just don't even know what to say about that. The final point is that it just shows how the lack of transparency with the Bureau of Prisons. It's just hard to get, as a reporter, it's very hard for me to get information, and to find out that a congressman can't get information, it's like a closed shop, a black box.
Well, Joe, it's interesting that you say, the BOP just necessarily isn't, for lack of a better word, the most important, or at least on the radar of the president. But the BOP is the largest Justice Department agency, budgeted around 37,500 employees and over 150,000 federal prisoners. I think it just speaks to how incarcerated people are always overlooked, are unimportant, especially, and that was made clear with COVID-19. But why now, with all of the cover-ups and the misconduct and corruption and employees who have lost all faith in Carvajal's ability to lead, will he be able to stay on the job until a new director is appointed? Because that can take a while.
Exactly. He's going to stay in that job, and my prediction will be months before someone is hired. This is not a job that the president appoints and then the person goes before the Senate. It's actually a job that people apply for, and the Attorney General, Merrick Garland, will make the hire. I don't know how many people are looking, wanting to take over the BOP job. You're kind of inheriting a bit of a mess there. So my gut is that he's going to be in that post for months yet.
Listen, it's clear that our federal prison systems are in a crisis. They're filled with deep issues, mostly systemic racism. And issues like this won't be cured simply by replacing the director. But it's a start. But just there still needs to be more done. What else needs to happen?
Well, one of the most pressing concerns is that there's a very high vacancy rate. This is a problem in the federal prisons and almost every state prison system, the other 50 systems around the country. If you don't have enough staff there, prisons can become dangerous, or the incarcerated people inside get neglected. Nurses and cooks and teachers get pressed into doing the job of correctional officers. And when that happens, nurses don't nurse, teachers don't teach, cooks don't cook. And the amount of services in the federal prison system, which is not very high already, just becomes even less. That doesn't, if you're an incarcerated person and you want to better yourself, you want to learn more, you want to improve yourself, the short staffing is a real obstacle to that. There's a problem with morale in many of these prisons. That's why people are leaving the jobs. And I think what you said earlier, that unfortunately, incarcerated people are just not high up on the priority list for both regular citizens or politicians who are writing the checks and passing the laws and making the policy.
Listen, if I were a cook or a teacher or a nurse within the prison system and I'm asked to guard inmates, incarcerated folks, because there's a shortage of staff, absolutely, I'd quit. What about the COVID-19 with this new strain, Omicron? There's 3,000 active cases among inmates and staff as of Wednesday compared to the 500 active cases in December.
Well, and that's probably an undercount because what the BOP has shown and other states' prison systems too is that they're not testing enough. You only know that the case exists when you test, but for months at a time over the pandemic, you would have prisons that I'm in North Carolina. There's a prison complex 20 miles away where were reporting 20, 30, 50 cases. And then all of a sudden it was really serious. They started testing and overnight the numbers quadrupled and quintupled. So I think that number is probably, is likely to be an undercount. And I'm talking with some of the prisoners in that complex, and some of the same mistakes apparently are being made where they're moving people from one unit to another. And this is a way that you introduce COVID to other parts of the prison by shuffling people around. I don't think that, from what I hear, the mask wearing by staff is not very, it's lax or not very uniform. There's a chicken pox outbreak in this prison as well. And it's, prisons and jails, it's not just a BOP, but prisons and jails are just a terrible place when there is an epidemic or pandemic.
Well, listen, Joe, right now voting rights seems to be taking the forefront, as it should, on the president's mind, but this is most certainly a pressing issue that needs immediate attention and action on the part of this administration. Joe Neff, investigative reporter for the Marshall Project, thank you very much for your time tonight. I appreciate you.